Hi everyone, welcome and thanks so much for joining us tonight for our first YMCA wellness class. My name is Julia Mulliken and I'm the Physician and Community Liaison here at Buffalo Rehab Group. And tonight I am joined with physical therapist Melissa Bulas-Mercuri. Did I get all of those names in there?
Yes.
Like I mentioned before, she's a physical therapist at the DePuy office and are doing wonderful things out there. One of our newest offices as well, and building that area and helping patients get their lives back. So tonight we're going to talk about really how to build out core strength. Why, maybe if you're doing cardio, that's not always the best way to build strength, and just really overall have a solid foundation for wellness to age gracefully and really have that longevity throughout life, right? So Melissa, kind of tell me about yourself and how you really got into physical therapy, but also specifically women's health as well.
So I have been a physical therapist here at Buffalo Rehab Group for almost 7 years now. I have bounced around to a bunch of locations, but now I am running our DePuy location, which is across from DePuy High School, right on Transit. I got into women's health because I noticed that it was a demographic that needed some help, and being a first-time mom myself in the last 8 months, I definitely have come to more of a realization of how women's health is definitely lacking for a lot of women, and just the resources out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think bringing awareness to some of the issues that maybe women kind of deal with in silence, and that there are solutions for them as well, too.
Absolutely.
But on a larger scale, I think I kind of mentioned it before, looking for longevity and really aging gracefully too. And a lot of that has to deal with bone strength, right?
Absolutely.
So can you kind of elaborate on really how that impacts, our everyday life?
Yeah, absolutely. So our bone strength is made up of two things. So we have bone reabsorption and bone formation. So in that bone reabsorption, these things called osteoclasts come in and they break down that bone. And in the formation phase, osteoblasts come in and fill that bone in. So what happens is this process occurs constantly throughout the day, throughout our lives. And over time, it will still occur, but it may start to slow down more, which will lead to sometimes that osteopenia and osteoporosis. So I'm going to draw on the whiteboard really quick, kind of a demonstration of where bone strength peaks and kind of what happens over our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so on the bottom here we have age, and on the side here we'll have strength of both bone and muscle. So over our lives, as we're young, our bone strength it's strong, and about 25 to 30 years old is kind of where it peaks. So a lot of us may not be 25 or 30 anymore. We may be past that, but it doesn't mean that we can't do things to help our bone strength at that point. So we hit that peak there, and then we start to see this slow decline until we hit menopause around 50, and then we start to see more of that sharper decline. And what can happen is, even though this natural process is always going to occur, we can't stop the fact that we hit our peak strength of both muscle and bone at 30, but we can change what happens after that through strengthening. So if we start to intervene anywhere along this line, we can start to slow that curve down. So we're still gonna lose that bone and that bone strength, but we can slow it down by building our strength through resistive exercises, through free weights, which we'll kind of go into more detail as we go on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's great, and I think it's kind of really eye-opening. Now, let's talk about, so you kind of mentioned that maybe people sitting at home aren't that, we're not all spring chickens at that 25 to 30 age. Is it something, if they're past that point right now, can they still, is it over for them?
No,
Yeah,
not at
right?
all. At any point. So you could be 60, 70, 80 watching this and still start to make a difference on both your strength and your bone strength.
And then really just help with that prevention too.
Correct.
So it's never,
Yeah.
no point is ever too late, right?
Correct.
The other question I wanted to ask, and I know all of you guys are going to sit up straight when I talk about this, but posture, right? So we're all sitting nice and tall now as we think about this, you know, in the ever-changing world of digital stuff where we always slouch. But how does that kind of play into this in this bone equation?
Absolutely. So as our posture, and like Julia mentioned, like we start to slouch. So as we slouch, we're getting more in this bent over position. And if our bones are weak, they're brittle, we have osteopenia, which is just like the start of weakening of the bone, or osteoporosis, where it is really that brittle bone. It puts us more at risk for stress fractures and compression fractures in that spine, because what happens is, I'm going to use my hands here. So if we have one bony part of our spine and the other, what will happen is when we are bent forward, we're actually putting more pressure onto that spine, which will make it, if it's brittle, more prone to breaking.
Which nobody wants.
No.
That doesn't sound good.
No.
And so talk about, though, I think, you know, that whole area of bone strength too. How does muscle play into that effect as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So our muscle attaches to our bone. So if we're stressing that muscle and we're doing pushing and pulling with that muscle, it's naturally going to pull at that bone and help that bone reabsorption and bone formation that we talked about previously to occur. So the more that we load and we stress our bones and our joints, the better, because our body will then become more used to that load and will start to lay down more bone, which will therefore strengthen that bone.
Now, how does like weight bearing go into this too with bone strength, right?
Yeah. So by weight bearing, we're putting weight directly on our feet. So if you're working out or you're walking, we're getting that natural push and pull of that muscle right on the bone, which is therefore going to help to create more bone to lay down to ultimately just make us stronger.
That makes a ton of sense. So I guess my thought too then is, when you're thinking about workouts and we're trying to, you know, build the ideal plan for them, right? Like everybody at home I know is super busy and you don't have a ton of time. So when they're thinking about kind of maximizing their workouts or making something really effective from them, how do they do that with keeping that weight bearing in mind?
So really taking everything to your feet. So thinking about being on your feet, standing. Maybe you're, instead of sitting and doing curls or doing upper body, you're standing while you're doing that. So that's just one simple way. But again, any exercise is good exercise. So if you don't have that ability to stand at that moment, just still being able to do that activity and that exercise and to just be active will just give you a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. So with that though, when we're talking about weights, I assume one of the ways that they could utilize is free weights. Kind of explain what free weights are, because I think there's this whole idea, right, about, you know, it's this idea of free weights is really kind of growing and developing only recently, where it's something that women should be doing as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So free weights don't mean just dumbbells. It can mean anything from like a kettlebell, resistance bands, even just your own body weight. So anything
Can of soup.
Yeah,
Right?
a can of soup
A
works
book.
great too. A book, yeah. Anything that has some weight to it that you have in your house is great. And there was a study done a couple years ago that looked at women over the age of 65. There's 90 of them. It took a look at just a control group where they were just doing like walking, biking, and then just no strengthening. And then they looked at one that looked for 3 months at resistance training, so using bands, using weights, using kettlebells, and they found a significant change with that resistance group compared to that control group. So it's really that kind of like that gold standard of building not only your muscle strength, but also your bone strength of using those, any sort of free weights to do that.
Yeah, and I think just making it really accessible for everybody at home, right?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. Well, now I think is a really good spot to take a pause for a second. When we come back, Melissa's going to walk us through what type of exercises are best for busy women to be doing at home and how to really maximize that. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be back.
This is where Leah learned to dribble, where James first picked up a brush, where Bella made meal kits for neighbors in need. This school year, many YMCAs are transforming some of their spaces for virtual learning, dedicating staff and even providing meals. So now, this is also where they will master long division, study photosynthesis, and learn when they need support, the Y is there for them. The Y, forever learning for a better us.
Pain was really bad, and it was very crippling. A lot of pain. Yeah, there were times when you thought, this is it. The main thing that it really prevented me doing was from being with the grandchildren. But the exercises that he taught me, little by little, I saw progress. I'm back to my normal life. Besides getting you better, they teach you how to live a life that will prevent you from going backwards again. They all care about the patients. That's where you're going to find your hope, and that's where you're going to feel better. I'm back.
Summary of the importance of why we want to strength train realistically too, but also how over time, like you said, that bone is naturally going to decline, especially for women too, and how we really can prevent that too and stay healthy and strong as long as possible, and see your grandkids get older too, all of those things. But I think now people are thinking, all right, Melissa, all of that made sense, but what are you going to make me do realistically to get this to happen, right?
Nothing crazy,
Nothing crazy. So Melissa's going to kind of talk through what those exercises look like. So we have our wonderful model, Emily, who's going to come in and kind of demonstrate for us as well. So I'm going to shift to the side here, and then they can kind of walk through them together. So I think the first thing we're going to talk about is really building that total body, that full strengthening for across all areas. And I think you have a great first exercise, right, to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start with squats. I'm sure there's a lot of groans happening right now.
Yeah.
But there are different ways that we can use those squats. So we'll kind of go through first, like just the basic squat and what the basics are of it. So I'm going to have Emily turn sideways here. So a big thing with the squat is we want to keep our feet hip width apart, and we want to keep weight on both our heels and our toes. And all Emily's going to do, she's going to think about sticking her butt backwards like there's a chair behind her, and bend down. Perfect. Come back up. Make sure those toes are staying on the ground, Emily. Good. So to start, you can start with 10 reps of those every other day. So we want to do strengthening things 2 to 3 times a week to give our muscles time to recoup. So to make this a little bit harder, we can add in those free weights, which I'll grab. So Emily can take a hold of those free weights.
Making it tougher on you.
And you can start just at your chest, kind of squatting down, coming back up again. Perfect.
Great. And then Emily, you want to show from another way too,
Yeah,
just for
I want
people
you
watching
turn
at home
forward
too.
there.
Yep.
Yep. And again, just thinking about keeping your feet there, sticking that butt back. Common errors with this are driving the knees forward, so they're going over the toes, or kind of going back so far that you're falling back on the heels. Yeah. So really thinking about keeping those feet nice and flat. And what we really want to do then is you can make it even harder where she can squat, and then as she comes up, she can add an overhead press to it. So taking those weights overhead, squatting down, taking those weights up overhead. So combining not only getting her lower body into it, but also her upper body. So getting that push and pull of that muscle on the bone to create more bone strength.
And Melissa, I'm not sure if you said how many reps should she be doing? How
Yeah.
frequently should this be?
So I would
she be working on
recommend starting with just 10 reps, 10, 15 reps, 2 to 3 times a week.
Okay, awesome. And then talk to us about, so I think when, you know, some of the ladies watching, maybe they go to the gym and they see something similar would be a leg press. Talk about the difference between maybe a squat versus a leg press.
Yeah, so it's working those lower body muscles, but like we talked about, we want to be weight bearing as much as possible with increasing our bone strength. But of course, that leg press, if it's your favorite thing to do, is fine to do. Again, anything is better than nothing, but really trying to get up on your feet to get more of that weight bearing to create more of that bone strength.
Perfect. What else you got for us? We've got the squat.
Let's do some step ups.
Awesome.
I can take this.
Emily's going to be sweating by the end of this, so we're really putting her work today.
So with the step up, what we're going to do is we're going to start with going forward first. So Emily's going to put one foot up on that step, and she's going to really think about using that front leg to push up to get up onto that step instead of propelling off that back foot. So go ahead, Emily, and step on up. Go ahead and come back down. We'll do a couple just like that. So really trying to push that weight through that front leg.
And then is this leg, when she comes down, supporting her slowly too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, so we're not just falling down.
Correct. Yep. We want to go nice and slow down.
Don't lose your balance
I know.
there.
Come on, Emily.
But let's say some people really aren't used to doing these at home.
Yeah.
How could they maybe holding onto a wall or something
A
like
wall.
that too?
If you do them on the stairs, you can use the railing. If you have a step stool at home, you can go right to like the counter or where the sink is, so you have some sort of surface to help give you some support. So one way to start is even just holding on to the wall that we have next to us or a counter to help with that upper body, just for balance, or just to help you don't quite have all of that strength yet to get up, that you need a little bit of a helping hand.
Awesome.
And then one of the things that can go wrong with this one is I'm going to have Emily demonstrate here for us. So we're going to put one foot back up there, Emily, and I really want you to think about pushing off this back foot. So you can see how she's kind of bounding up instead of before where we were doing that correctly, where she's more of gliding up and using more of those hip muscles, knee muscles, quads, your glutes to help get you up and down the stairs.
Yeah, so toning the peach, right?
Yes.
Which is what everybody wants.
Yes. So we not only can go forward on these, we can also go sideways. So Julie, can I actually slide where you are?
Sure, absolutely. Just kick me out of the way, Melissa.
So this time what we're going to do is Emily's going to step her foot up sideways, and she's going to do the same thing. Again, not falling over. She's going to
need your
push
counter.
straight up using more of that leg on the stairs. Or on that step at home. Again, you're going to do about 10 to 15 reps of these 2 to 3 times a week. Again, not pushing off that leg as well, or really allowing that knee to go over that front toe too far as you're stepping up. There we go.
Is the one with the stress ball?
Yeah, want to try from the side
Yeah,
too,
we'll
Em?
switch sides here.
Okay.
And can you come up actually in the front here so they can at home can see it? Yep.
Yeah. Yep, perfect. And then the another common mistake is just exactly what Emily's doing. She's stepping backwards more than coming directly to the side. So making sure that you're stepping down directly to that side.
Awesome.
Perfect. And again, 10, 15 reps, 2 to 3 times a week for these as well. And then if you really those are pretty easy, you're looking for something a little bit more challenging, we're going to do a twisting one. So I'm going to help you with this one. So we're going to start facing one direction, and then you're going to turn your foot the opposite direction. Perfect. And then you're going to match your body to your foot on the step, and then you're going to turn back down. Yes. Perfect. So the big thing here is making sure those hips are getting around. Again, if you need to use a wall or a counter to start with this one, safety first. And again, she's going to do 10 to 15 reps, 2 to 3 times a week.
Awesome. What else? All right, so squats, variations of the step up, so that front, the side, and the twist.
why don't we let Emily have her lower body, give her lower body a little bit of a break, and why don't we go to some upper body. We can work on a little bit of some standing rows. So I'm going to grab you some free weights here. So I have some dumbbells here for you. And really what we're going to do is really thinking about here, bending over at the waist, so you're keeping your spine nice and neutral. Good. And what you want to do is I want you to kind of, you're going to row right out to the side, trying to squeeze those shoulder blades together. So coming in, squeezing those shoulder blades. Perfect.
And then we want to turn to the side
Yep.
too, so they can see from the other way. Yeah. So bending over, neutral
Yep.
spine.
So
Maybe
you can
show what not to do with the neutral spine. So
Yeah,
either
perfect.
hunching
Yep,
or
hunching
arching.
or arching up.
Yeah.
Perfect. Correct. So really thinking about, you can see here that she's bent over. She still has the straight line from her hips to her upper back, and then she's coming in, squeezing those shoulder blades together to start to get some of that strengthening through her upper body while we're standing. So by standing, we're getting that force from the ground that's helping to regrow that bone.
Yeah, and really activating the core here too, right? Because
Correct,
let's think
yeah.
about maybe a standing versus a seated row. Maybe ladies have done that before too.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, seated, perfectly fine if that's what you're used to doing, or using one of those seated row machines. Again, anything is better than not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but really trying to challenge yourself to get up on your feet and get that weight bearing, like we talked about previously, of helping to regrow that bone, make that bone stronger, make that muscle stronger, is kind of key with this.
Great. All right. So we've got the row. What else she got?
Let's do some,
Maybe some reaches.
yeah, let's do some overhead reaches. We'll give your lower body a little bit more of a break here.
With the weights?
Yeah, we'll stay with the weights. Again, if the weights are too much, you can use soup cans at home, and you can always start all of these without any weights as well. It's just wherever is appropriate for you. And then what we're going to do this time is we're going to incorporate both our upper body and our lower body. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn and punch overhead. And big thing is you want that foot to turn with you. So we don't want to leave it planted on the ground. By turning that hip, you're going to save your lower back and not crank on it. So she can start off with doing 10 to one side, and then she can go 10 to the other side. And if she wants even more of a challenge, she can alternate. So go one side, first the other. Good. And this is working arms, core, hips. This is really a good overall body workout. And again, just making sure that with any weights that you're doing, that you're reaching up overhead, you're not having any pain or discomfort in those shoulders as well.
Awesome. And then so squats, step ups, reaches, rows, and I think the last one you're going to show us is maybe another leg move of a lunge.
Yes, we're going to do some side lunges.
Great.
So I'll put these off to the side here. I'll give Emily's arms a little bit of a break here. So what we're really going to do with this side lunge is really start to activate our glute and our hip muscles. So one of the biggest things that can happen is, especially when we have brittle bones or weak bones, is we can fall. And the most common thing to be fractured in a fall is your hip. Mm-hmm. So by getting you nice and strong in that hip area can help, to prevent you from falling, because the more strength we have, it plays into our balance, which will help us stay up on our feet. And then really just targeting those glute muscles. It's one of our biggest areas in our body muscle-wise. So the stronger our hips are, the stronger our core becomes, and the stronger and more healthier lifestyle we can live.
Awesome.
So what we're going to start off with here, I'll have Emily go from the front first, and then we'll turn to the side. So she's going to keep her feet more than hip width apart. And what she's going to do is she's just going to glide to the side, sticking her butt back and reaching towards her knee. So by reaching towards her knee, it's going to turn her butt muscle or her glute muscle on more. So go ahead, Emily, go ahead and come back up, and we'll come back to this side. So really thinking about hinging that hip backwards. So think about that squat where we're pushing that butt back. Same thing's happening here. I'll have her turn to the side here so we can kind of see it from that side angle. So she's coming here, and then she's coming back down, bringing that hip and butt back and out. How's your hip and glute feeling there, Emily?
A little sore.
Good.
Now, Melissa,
Good, you
for
can stop
maybe
there.
for this one and also for squats too. So what happens if maybe their knee is bothering them, maybe in that move or maybe in a squat? What maybe they can adjust or change?
So you don't have to go down super low. Just getting that small motion
An activation.
could be
Yeah.
just key. Making sure in both of these that your knee's not going over your toe. If that knee's going over your toe, it's going to put a lot more strain on that knee, and it can lead to that pain.
And that is probably very similar in the squat too, right?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
so just making sure they're really trying to lean back and almost,
Yeah.
touch a chair.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other way that people normally will go about getting their hip abductors or your glutes to fire is that hip abductor machine.
Yeah.
So again, it's going to be great at getting those to fire, but it's not functional. So if you think about the side lunge, we side step to get in and out of the car, to move in a smaller space. So maybe you need to sidestep to move through the kitchen or in the bathroom. So really trying to stay functional, weight bearing as possible. But again, if you're using those machines at the gym, it's better than nothing.
Yep, I was just telling them I was squeezing out of my car in the snow today as I parked real close, so I was definitely doing a sidestep in that moment. All right, so let's come back and talk about cardio machines. What are your suggestions for people that maybe enjoy doing cardio or want to add a little bit more, or maybe, they're saying, Melissa, please, now that I know I can strength train, maybe I don't have to do as much cardio.
So cardio is great, but it's not going to help us build our bone strength, our bone or muscle strength. But it is great for both our lungs and our heart and our endurance. We need good endurance. We need our heart and our lungs to have that endurance and its strength in a way to function throughout the day and just live an overall healthier lifestyle. So you definitely need to incorporate that cardio into your routine, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you're doing because you're not going to build that strength.
Perfect. So I think I want to pivot to a common but maybe not as talked about topic, right? And I think that's urinary incontinence too.
Yeah.
So to discuss that though, we have Katherine Myers, who is a physical therapist as well, but she is also a pelvic floor specialist. So she's going to come in and kind of discuss that with us too. So Emily, maybe you want to step out for a little bit. She'll come back and visit us shortly. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. She's been
Thanks
waiting
for
in the wings, ready to talk about this and really help people at home. And I think a lot of women especially think maybe this is something they have to live with, right? Or maybe they've never really heard about it. So kind of talk about urinary incontinence and the effect of it and maybe why it's happening.
Okay, so urinary incontinence is a loss of bladder control. It can happen after sneezing, laughing, coughing. It can be a complete inability to control urination. So it ranges a gamut. There's stress incontinence, which is more related to coughing, like loss of a little bit of urine with stressful things like coughing or sneezing. And then there's urge incontinence, which is more related to other outside sources. It could be like a food irritant, or it could be related to just that lack of training of the bladder. So an inability to sense when it's actually completely full. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, who is this affecting and why?
So it can affect all of us as women. Everybody. So about 3% of young women who play sports can be affected by urinary incontinence. Postpartum women, about 35% of postpartum women are affected with urinary incontinence. Because of after childbirth, there's changes that happen to the pelvic floor, some laxity in the pelvic floor muscles that can create urinary incontinence. And then about 50% of women over the age of 65, they also can experience urinary incontinence.
Which is a huge number.
Yeah.
And I think the postpartum one is really shocking to me too, because it's not just talking about people that just recently had a baby, maybe like Melissa. This could be women that their kids are grown, right? And they're still having this issue too.
And a lot of women think, oh, well, after I have kids, I just have to deal with it. And you don't have to deal with it, which is awesome.
Wonderful, right?
So.
I think that's one of the biggest testimonials your patients give you, right? Is that they didn't know there was a solution for some of these issues.
Absolutely.
So maybe somebody's at home and thinking, that might be me. So talk to me about, if they've never even heard of maybe this pelvic floor therapist specialty. What can they be doing at home to maybe kind of help them, before, or if they think it's something that I need to see, but let me see if these kind of exercises help me to start.
Okay, perfect. So starting with a good breathing pattern, making sure you're regulating your core pressure. So we have 3 diaphragms in our body. We have our one in our throat, one below our lungs, and then one in our pelvic floor. So it is all interconnected. And so if our breathing isn't regulated correctly, then our pressure system increases, and then things like coughing and sneezing will cause us to leak urine. Should I bring out Emily?
Yeah, sure.
So come on out, Emily.
And I'll hop up the screen to make room for you guys.
Okay. So as a pelvic floor physical therapist, we would assess Emily for her breathing pattern. So we look at, is it okay if I? Okay. So we look at underneath the ribs here.
Then you just want to step up a little bit just so they can see a little bit closer.
So you're looking at the angle where the fingers kind of come together, and it should make a 90-degree angle. So that's one of the first things we look at with breathing patterns. I'm going to teach her, she has a great pattern right now. So there's no rib flaring, or she is in perfect position to start diaphragmatic breathing. So what I'm going to have you do is put one hand on your below your rib cage, and then the other hand on your chest. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a nice deep breath in, and you're going to fill from the bottom up to the top. Now this is a great example. We don't want to fill up here, so I want you to just relax your upper traps a little bit and just kind of let them go, and then breathe out.
And most of us are chest breathers, so this is definitely going to be challenging for some of you. You may even be trying it while we're sitting here. So Katie, what's one other way that we could, if someone was struggling with this, start to do this exercise?
So you could change the position. You could have the person laying down. Another way you can change it, and because we want to get great posterior or backside rib expansion, I've had people lay over a therapy ball and work on breathing from the back also, so that you're getting this nice 360 breath around the rib cage.
Or maybe laying on their tummy on the bed too, if they don't have a ball or something, to then feel their stomach expanding.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So so that's great for learning how to breathe correctly. The next exercise that is important for women who are experiencing incontinence. So our pelvic floor muscles, which you can see inside the model here, there's 3 layers of pelvic floor muscles, and they're responsible for supporting the bladder, and they will help when they're engaged to protect somebody from leaking urine. So the next exercise we're going to look at is a Kegel. And so we've all heard of a Kegel. We've learned about them, but learning how to do one properly is is very interesting. So I've had the gamut of people saying, oh, I know how to do a Kegel, and they'll do a bridge or something completely out of the norm. But so we're going to talk about how to do a Kegel today. So the main idea is that you want to feel your muscles pull up and in when you do a Kegel. So one way you can sort of facilitate this is by sitting on a ball. So if you take a ball, like a small ball, and you sit on it, it's dome shaped. So the dome will touch the pelvic floor muscles, which will kind of activate and help facilitate those muscles. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a Kegel. So the idea is you would want to think of it as if you were taking a blueberry and pulling it up and into you. So you're contracting those muscles. One mistake that people make is they tighten their glute muscles, these butt muscles back here. And so one thing you can do is you can palpate those. So go ahead and touch your glutes. And so as you do your Kegel, you're doing your Kegel, but you're trying not to activate these muscles. If you feel these muscles activating, then that's not a Kegel, that's more of a butt clench.
Right?
Yeah, a butt clench. So.
And I think for me, a lot of times when you ask people to do Kegels, they're like bearing down.
Yes.
So really think, like, that's one of the common things. So exactly what Katie said, like thinking about picking up a blueberry from your vagina and pulling it upward instead of thinking about like pushing out. And really thinking, another good cue if like that's not working is thinking about like holding in like gas. We've all had to let go and not been able to, and think about how you're holding it, and that it's that same concept of pulling up and activating that pelvic floor.
Awesome.
Great. And then I think we have one more, right?
Yes. So sometimes if somebody can't get the Kegel right off the bat, we'll do transversus activation, and there's some studies that suggest that by just activating your transversus, there's some pelvic floor overflow, which just basically means that even though you're activating a different muscle group, you're still getting some facilitation or activation of the pelvic floor muscles.
And Katie, for us at home who don't know what a transversus is,
Yes.
is that like our obliques? Like what is that?
No, so we have this great group of muscles that wrap around our spine that kind of act as an abdominal brace. And so it's a great muscle group for supporting the spine, but also helping to facilitate the pelvic floor. So I always like to incorporate a nice breath in. So it's a nice breath in. And then as you breathe out, towards the end of your breath, you're going to feel those muscles engage as they pull in towards each other. And when that happens, you're also getting a little bit of pelvic floor activation too. So if you're having trouble with the Kegel, this is a great place to kind of start. And then as a result of that, you'll get some carryover into the pelvic floor, which might make it a little bit more stronger and then make you be able to revisit the Kegel later on. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Emily.
You're welcome.
I'm going to step back in now. Appreciate her. Yeah, you guys can stay. Appreciate her hopping in and demonstrating those. So that was really great. And I appreciate both of you hopping in and explaining all of those. And now, we have a special bond, talking about vaginas, Kegels, squats, the beach. So we've really become the best of friends in this short timeline, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So awesome. That's great. So let's just reiterate again on a really like a high level what we've discussed about, because we've thrown a lot at them. But I think it's really good just to kind of summarize that. So bone strength diminishes as we age, but how do we slow that process down?
So by adding that resistance training, that weight-bearing training, so being up on your feet, doing some of the exercises that we did, or taking some of the exercises that you may have been doing seated at the gym, standing up, doing them at home, standing, grabbing some dumbbells like Emily used here, or you could use like the tubing or the resistance bands if you have a kettlebell, or really just being on your feet with your own body weight will help to give that push and pull on that bone to help it create more bone to make that bone stronger.
Awesome. And then talk about cardio is great and the cardio machines are great for your heart and lungs, but maybe not for your bones and muscles.
Yeah. So cardio is great. We want to do cardio to continue to live a healthy lifestyle, but it can't be the only thing that we're doing. We do need to add some strengthening in. So it could be some days you do cardio and the other days that you're adding that strengthening in. We really want to target that strengthening 2 to 3 times a week. There was a study done that showed doing it 2 to 3 times a week, even over the age of 50, significantly improved our balance, our gait or our ability, our walking ability, and just reducing our risk of falling.
Perfect.
Which we know is not good as we get older due to that risk of fractures if our bones aren't strong.
And then Katie, so urinary incontinence is common.
It's super common, so don't be embarrassed about it, and get to a pelvic physical therapist for help.
Yeah,
So,
and really just improving that strength, right, to kind of prevent it as well.
absolutely.
Awesome.
You do not have to live with it.
Great. So before we jump into a few questions, I just want to add that for any of you at home that maybe want a little bit more of an individualized approach, there's going to be a link in the chat and you can request an appointment with a physical therapist, either of these two amazing ladies, Katie specifically for that pelvic floor therapy as well. And then also everybody watching, you're going to receive an email tonight that's going to have a free 8-week program guide to help you really get stronger and maintain that lifestyle. So really take what these ladies have talked about today and put it into real life practice as well. But in terms of the other thing is, the last question we had was, are exercises good in the pool?
Absolutely. So the water is gives us resistance as well. So getting chest height in that water, if you're struggling and suffering with arthritis, will take a lot of pressure off of those joints. So moving in the pool may feel better, but it will also give us that resistance. So by working through that water, so maybe you're doing, like we did earlier, those bent over rows, doing those in the water, you'll get that resistance, along with being able to squat, you can lunge, you can do like jogging, anything like that in the water will still give us that resistance, and it will be safer on the joints if you're having pain.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, ladies. We really appreciate it. Thank you, all of you, for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and reply, and they'll be able to get in touch with you to answer any of the questions. Have a wonderful night and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.